So this video is a little bit different to what I usually do. I thought I'd show you this resin, epoxy resin nightlight that I've made, and the video does feature a milling machine and a CNC milling machine, so I thought that was enough of an excuse to share this project with you. And maybe like me, you too have been interested in this material, epoxy resin, and you fancied having a go with it like I did. The other excuse I had is me and my wife were expecting our first child, a boy, and so I wanted to make something for his nursery, and so I decided to make a nightlight out of epoxy resin and a bit of oak at the bottom here to house the electrics. So I'll just talk you through what I did, because I didn't intend to turn this into a video. I haven't got all of it on video, but I have got photographs which I'll share with you. So firstly, the product I used was the Epoxy 2K700 Pro epoxy resin, and the reason I went with this resin is because it works well with deep fills, deep pours, so it was recommended that this could go up to 100 mil deep. Also, because I wanted to do this in my shed where I couldn't really control temperature, this epoxy resin, it didn't really have any specific guidance on temperature, apart from the temperature would have affect the curing time, and it did reference a curing time even down to 10 degrees, which I was pretty confident this time of year, where it was 10 degrees outside at night, I could probably manage that. But the impression I got from what I read about it was that even a lower temperature, all it would do would extend the curing time. So what I did is I actually laid it down flat, so you're actually looking at the top of the pour in this view at the moment. But you'll see in the photos that I poured it so it's about 40 mil deep. It's about 200 mil tall, the resin, and about 90 mil wide. And I used a sheet of plastic 6 mil thick to create my shuttering. I used a blue dye in the epoxy as well, and it seemed pretty easy to mix. I used scales to measure out the weights. The ratio for this is 100:32, part A, part B for this epoxy resin, and that's done by weight. So that's how I did that. Now unfortunately my shuttering, or my mould, the plastic mould, wasn't the best. I did have a leak where I lost about 2/3 of the total depth, and I had to buy some more of the resin. You can see the two pours if you look at it carefully, but it's not too obvious, and as my first attempt I was quite happy that I was able to recover it just by doing a second pour of resin on top. The other thing that wasn't ideal with my shuttering, and maybe this is just the case in all instances when you use an epoxy resin, is the resin wasn't perfectly aligned with the edge of my timber. So afterwards I machined the timber in the milling machine. I just used a fly cutter, 600 RPM, and it was really nice machining that. But once it was machined, you were left with cut marks and an opaque finish, and so then I sanded that down. I started off with a 240 grit, and then I went to a 1000 grit. I think ideally I might have liked to have done a grit in between the 240 and the 1000. From the 1000 I went to 2000, and then from then I used a polishing compound and a electric polisher to get the finish. And at the point of machining it, I thought potentially this was going to be the point where it was ruined and I wouldn't get that finish back. But I was surprised at how easy it was to get those machine marks off, to sand it down to a smooth finish and then polish it to get a nice finish as it is here now. This isn't perfect, but this is my first attempt. It's just going to sit in the corner of our spare bedroom in the nursery, and I'm happy with it. Now what you'll notice as well is in the back there are some sea creatures. My wife has decorated the nursery in a under the sea theme, and so to tie this in with that theme, not only is it blue, but in the back side I engraved these sea creatures. I used Adobe Illustrator to create a SVG file, and then I imported that SVG file into Fusion 360 into the sketch, and then from there I was able to extrude the patterns into the material and then create my tool paths for the CNC milling machine, and I'll show you a clip of that now. If you're thinking about having a go with epoxy resin and you'd like to have a go but you're being put off by potentially getting it wrong, well, I would say have a go. I would highly recommend using this product. For me, I didn't really have any problems with it. It really did turn out well, and it wasn't as hard as I was expecting. So give it a go. I'll put a link in the description to all the tools and materials that I used for this project if you want to try it yourself. So anyway, that was it, just a short video. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video, and we'll get back to some proper machining projects. Thanks for watching.